the sun is just starting to climb up over the treetops. And it's gonna be a beautiful day, that's plain to see. But I won't be around at all, so don't even bother to call. 'Cause on a day like today, there's one place I gotta be. Gone fishing. I suppose there are lots of things that I should be doing, but it's funny right now, nothing seems to come to my mind. You know, fishing tends to put me at ease and straighten out my priorities. I know nothing's more important than what's on the end of my line. Gone fishing, gonna sit back, relax, and leave my worries behind. Gone fishing. You know there's nothing like a fishing trip to give a man peace of mind. I know the car needs washing, the roof has a leak, my income tax was due last week, but I don't care 'cause I'm gone fishing today. Now I've gone fishing with Bill Dance today.
What's up, guys? What is up? Welcome back to another episode of DeckTalk Podcast. And Pappy and myself are wanting to tell everybody Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And this episode is brought to you by Cast King. Cast King is doing something special with us this episode. They're doing a giveaway of a tackle bag, and I was told that they're going to fill up that tackle bag full of product. And so but to be entered into the competition to get the giveaway, you're going to have to answer this question. It is a 2-answer question. The question is, at the 2025 Bassmaster Classic, who did Bill Dance put a pie in their face? And it is a 2-answer question. So make sure you leave that in the comment, and we will get that sent out to you as soon as possible, guys. So with that being said, Merry Christmas, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
Merry Christmas, guys. This is Pappy J. Mr. Bill, it is an honor and a blessing to have you on our show. First and foremost, I have watched you in so many years, and I mean the techniques that you've done, and I've learned from watching your shows, and
thank you.
It has really helped me out through my fishing career, I guess you could say. But without further ado, I wanted to kind of hit you with this first question. It's you caught your first bass in a modern tournament back in 1967.
Yep.
What was that moment like for a young angler just starting out, and how did it shape your approach to the sport?
Well, catching that first fish, you know, you have a lot of pressure on you when you compete. And I had, that particular day, I had seven spots that I had found in practice that were holding fish. And the area that I was fishing, it was, the depth seemed to be the same, right around 17 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And I was paired with a boy by the name of Troy Goldsby from Little Rock, Arkansas. The tournament went out of, I'm trying to remember the name of the creek, Prairie Creek. So an old gentleman, probably the best bass fisherman I ever met in my life, his name was Glenn Andrews. I met Glenn at a boat show in Memphis and was just so impressed with his personality and his accomplishments. And even to this day, I have never met a fisherman that had the uncanny ability to find and locate fish, especially in deep water. But But that particular tournament, Glenn said, I'll tell you what you need to do, Bill. Slow down. If something changes along the shoreline, it doesn't change. The changes, back that up. The change does not change once it meets the water. It continues on out. And so I kind of remembered that. And the day in practice, I went to the back of Prairie Creek, and I started idling along the bank, looking. And it was a cove right straight across from the marina. And I idled into that cove, and about halfway up that timbered cove, I looked to the right, and I saw a gap that went all the way into the bank. And then I turned, and I remembered what Glenn said, just because it comes into the water, it continues on. And I turned and I looked across to the opposite side, and I saw where it came out. I said, I wonder what that could be. Couldn't be a highway. It's probably no logging road. I grew up in the country, and I knew what logging roads were and how it kind of looked. So I picked up a rod and dropped the trolling motor, picked up the rod, and I made a cast. And as soon as the bait got to about 17 feet, I counted cast down like 1,001, 1,002, 3, 4, 5. Bam! I caught a bass, about a 2.5 pound bass. And I said, doggone, look here. And I threw right back. I caught another one. Then I picked up my dumbing rig, what I called, where I could bend a wire, not a hook, in the worm and throw the worm. And the fish would hit it. And as he pulled on it, he would pull the worm completely off my little dumbing rig. That way I didn't want to run the risk of catching more catchable fish off that spot. So I picked it up. I made 3 casts and had 3 hits. So in 5 casts, I caught 2 and had 3 more hits. So I left that spot. I looked at the other side. It didn't hold any fish. I just started idling on up, checking out other spots in Prairie Creek and then on out to the mouth of Prairie Creek. But the morning of that tournament, as I said, Troy was my partner from Little Rock. And I backed up, and there were only 2 big boats in that tournament. I had a big boat with a 60 Mercury on it, and Ray Mursky from Dallas, he had the same kind of boat, a glass boat with a 50 Merc on it. Well, they eased out, and I backed way back to the back and stayed way out on the outside. And I remember Ray Scott said the morning prayer and said a prayer for safety and shot a flare gun. Well, all the boats took off, and I waited just a second. I just said, hang on, Troy. I made a left turn and went right across that cove, right into the creek. And while the boat was still idling, just kind of moving forward, I ran to the front, dropped the trolling motor, picked my rod up, and made a cast. And time the worm got down, I just moved it, and bang, one hit it, and I caught him. He's about a 2.5 pound. I think it was a Kentucky. It was a big, fat Kentucky bass, spotted bass. And Troy said, look at there. And I said, what? He said, look at all the boats. We can still see all the boats. You caught a fish before anybody did. And I said, I'm just lucky, I guess. And so I threw back, and I got a limit. And Troy had missed several fish and hung up a little bit. And he had 7. And I said, Troy, I don't want to beat these fish down. I may need them tomorrow. He said, I understand. I said, but I've got 6 other spots that are holding about the same size fish. And one spot has got pretty good sized fish on it. He said, I understand. I said, we'll get you a limit. And so I took off. And anyway, I fished the other spot, and I found a ledge in about 16 to 20 feet of water on a bluff where the water It was 60 feet right up against the bluff, and idling down it. It just jumped up to about 16 feet for about, I'd say, 20 yards, and then it dropped back off into 60. Well, naturally, I turned around, threw a worm out on it, about 17 feet. There they were. They were bunched on that ledge that extended out along that long bluff. Something irregular about that bluff held in fish, and that irregular feature was a high spot, a ledge that came way off the bluff. And Troy, he caught his 3 fish there, and I caught one maybe 4 pounds, and I threw him back, and I did throw him back. I threw back one and threw him in the cooler or in the live well. So he kept saying, "Y'all can't get over. You caught the very first fish." Well, he told Ray that, and that's how the story started. On Beaver Lake in Prairie Creek, in a little cove right off the left going out toward the main lake. It's where that spot was where we did what we did. And catching a limit, and Troy almost caught a limit. But that particular tournament, I only fished 3 spots, and the rest of the day we went and looked for spots because I knew I had 5 more spots, but I didn't know about the wind, the weather, too much going on those spots. So it's always good to have several places on the south side of the lake, or maybe on the north side of the lake, that you can get to and fish comfortably out of the wind. But that's the way it happened. That first fish.
That is awesome.
That
Now,
is
and I want to say something. I grew up in Middle Tennessee in a little town called Mount Juliet. And when I was around 6 years old, I ran into you at a boat ramp. I cannot remember if it was Percy Priest or Old Hickory. We lived right on Old Hickory Lake. So it probably was Old Hickory if I was to guess. And it surprised me. And it made, at 6 years old, I got to see one of the legends in fishing and how much, and I was telling Pamela earlier, it seemed like it was an hour that you talked to me. And I know that it was probably only like 10, 15 minutes, but just the time that you spent with me. And I can remember talking to my dad and my grandfather and stuff about it. My grandfather was a little upset because he didn't get to meet you. So, but I want to tell you thank you. And every time that I have met you and I've got to see, we get to run into each other a couple times a year now from the past 5 or 6 years. And so that moment stuck with me, that you spent that time. You had a job to do where you was doing some filming and stuff like that. And you took the time just to talk to a little 6-year-old kid. How that impressed me, and it stuck with me. I mean, my whole life. And so I wanted to tell you, thank you so much. And I see that every time that I see you, and you have a long line of people that is wanting to sit or come up and talk to you, that you take the time to talk to them for a second and take a picture. And I want to say thank you so much for you being the gentleman that you are to do that. Because I know a lot of the anglers that they're there just because their sponsor tells them to. And as soon as their time's up, they want to leave. And you're not like that. You have taken your time. I've seen to where Pamela's been trying to saying, "Dad, we got to go. And you're like, there's somebody else and especially if it's a little kid, they're standing in line. You are willing to, that's what's important to you. So thank you again so much.
Well, thank you.
So with 8 BASS wins and 3 Angler of the Year titles in just over a decade. You're often called the first superstar in pro fishing.
Ooh.
What is the toughest lesson you learned during the intense competitive stretch from 67 to 80?
Well, actually, I'll start back with I was on Pickwick Lake on the Tennessee River near Savannah, Tennessee one day, along with my wife was fishing with me.
Right.
Well, actually, she was reading a book while I was fishing, but we were fishing along this bank, particular creek, mouth of this particular creek. And I looked up, and a bass boat was coming across the lake. And it pulled up to me, and there were 3 people in it. Ed Howes, who was with the Tennessee Game and Fish Commission back then, TWRA, and Ray Scott, who I recognized, and Glenn Andrews, my best fisherman I ever met. And he said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I've caught 2 or 3." And he said, "Back off that bank a little bit. You're fishing too shallow." And I said, "What?" He said, "Back off that bank a little bit. Right up here where this point is that you're working toward, that's a creek channel point." And I said, "A what?" And he said, "A creek channel point. And it's a turn in and a turn out of the creek."
Right.
And of course, what's that mean? I didn't see. I grew up fishing shallow water, Oxbow Lakes off the Mississippi River. And if I caught a fish 10 feet deep, I thought that was something else. And I shied away from that deeper water, assuming that most of these bass were in 2 to 4 feet of water. And a high percentage of them were. And he said, "How heavy a sinker you got on, Bill?" And I said, "Oh, it's about a 3/16." He said, "That put you on a 3/8." I said, "I don't even have a 3/8." I said, "Wait a minute." And I looked and I said, "Yeah, I got 3 of them." He said, "Put one on, ease up to that point, and make a cast toward the intake on the TVA dam, Pickwick TVA dam. And your bait will go down to about 20 feet. I said, "What?" He said, "About 20 feet. Those fish there's a school of fish right there." And he said, "We caught a few off of it, and we moved on and went on up to another creek where Ed said the fish were considerably bigger." And I said, "Are you telling me that you caught fish in 20 feet of water?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "I'm not kidding you. I'm telling you." He said, "This boat here is 17 feet. Just add 3 more feet to it. That's not really that deep." I said, "It's deep to me when I never caught a fish over 10 feet of water."
Right.
So he said, "We're going down below the dam and have breakfast at a restaurant down there called the Botel. Y'all want to join us?" And Diane said, "That's fine." So he said, "Give us about an hour and a half, and we'll meet you there. We've got a couple of things to do." And I said, "Fine." Well, I got that sinker on, and I eased up, and I made a cast, and I counted it down at like 1,001, 1,002. I had 1,019, 20, 21, 22. It hit the bottom. I went, "Good gracious." And I just lifted my rod tip up, and as the worm dropped back, boom, one hit it. I set the hook. And the emotion and the thought of catching fish in this depth of water, this was just so new to me. And I reeled him up and lifted him out of the water. And I said, Diane, did you just see what I just did?" And she said, "You caught a bass." I said, No, I caught a bass 22 feet deep. And she said, okay. She didn't know any good. I said, I can't believe that. And I threw back, I caught another one, a 2 to 3 pound bass. And so, do another cast, I missed him, do back in 4 casts, I caught 3 and missed 1. And I was just starting to shake then, thinking, something I've got to do it. I don't know what it is. What is it, Lord? Help me think. Help me think. And it came to me, you have got to learn how to fish deep water. And most of the fishermen I knew, whether it be around my hometown or other places that we fished, were all shallow water fishermen. And knowing that Ray's tournament was coming up, I figured I have got to learn how to fish deep water before that tournament. So this was in March, and the tournament was in June. I spent a lot of time with topo maps, with Glenn's help, with line compasses, where I'd find something that looked good. I did have a depth finder, mainly just to show me the depth. It was a flasher unit. And I'd get out in the lake, and I'd, off of a topo map, he said, try to get the smallest interval that you could possibly get. A 5-foot interval is going to show a lot more than a 10 or 20-foot interval. So I got with TVA, and they did have a small interval map, a 5 foot with 2.5 foot auxiliaries intervals. So, I mean, it was real detailed. So I was learning to read the map and trying to find these places. And I was starting to catch a lot of fish doing it. And I'd take a line compass and get a 90-degree reading this way and a 90-degree reading that way. Either way, from 12 to back to 9 or from 12 to 3. And I'd mark that spot. I put a little dot. And I'd name the spot. And so I was learning more and more about how to read a map, how to read a depth finder, how to catch fish in deep water. So by the time Beaver came around, that first tournament, I came in first place the first day and held first place the second day. And the third day, it was a good old boy and a good friend of mine, Stan Sloan, out of Nashville. He beat me by about a pound out of first place. But I asked him, I said, did you catch fish deeper than you normally fish Kentucky Lake? He fished Kentucky Lake all the time. He said, yeah, in this deep, clear water, naturally I fish deeper. I said, how deep? He said, well, I caught some fish 8 or 9 feet deep. And I said, whoa. But I didn't dare tell him what I was doing. So anyway, that depth, learning how to fish, I knew I had to change the way I fished. I had to change everything about what I was doing. And it worked good for me. And when I went to Beaver, I caught them deep. Right after that, I think we went to Smith Lake in Alabama. And deep, clear lake. And I caught my fish 50 feet deep in standing timber and on a jigging spoon. Then we left and went to Rayburn in Texas, and I caught my fish in 15 to 20 feet of water in the Black Forest. And I think the next tournament we went to Ross Barnett, and it was a deep pattern there. It was around 15 to 20 feet. And I was out in the middle of the lake, and most of the guys were in there in the back of the coves and the coves fishing. So I knew that the patterns, I had a good chance to place good and to win out here in this deep water. And surprisingly, the next tournament we had, I won Rayburn. Then we came to Ross Barnett in Mississippi, and I won it. And then the next tournament was back to Smith Lake. And I said, "Oh, I tell you what, I know a good pattern there. It's got to be deep water." And I went back to those trees. And surprisingly, these spotted bass were a little bit bigger, and there they were. I had a Dixie Jet half-ounce jigging spoon, and I mean, it was a good one. I only had 3 of them, though, and I eased up and would just drop it down. And I said, I've got to figure out a way to jig the tops of these trees. They're 50 feet deep on my graph. So what I did, I walked off 48 feet off my rod tip, and I took a black mark slot, and I rubbed about a 6-inch line mark on the line. This was bound filament before braid, and I marked about a 6-inch black spot on the line. So when I dropped that spoon, I'd wait for that black mark to come off the tip of my rod, and I knew I was right at 48 feet. And I just jig it, and the fish feed up.
Right.
And eyes are face to feed, crappie especially, but bass too. And sure enough, I dropped it 48. I lifted it one time, and it went down, and I felt him, and I got him. He was about 2 pound, 2.5 pound Kentucky, big, fat, chunky, pretty spotted bass. Well, the limit there was 15 a day. And where other states like Tennessee was 5, no, Tennessee was 10. I think Mississippi was 15 back then. Texas was 15. But anyway, I got my limit all 3 days, and I lost 2 spoons. And I came home with that 1 spoon, and I went on a prowl looking for it, trying to find it. And I found where I could get them. And that opened the door. I won 3 in a row. And within a week after I got home, I got a call from Ken White at Hedden Lure Company. Now, Hedden was a big, big lure company back then. The 2 biggest lure companies were Arbogast and Hedden. I mean, big, big companies that made a lot of different baits. And he offered me a job to go to work for. I said, what would I be doing? And he said, just traveling around and meeting, fishing with writers, promoting our line of baits, and fishing with mom and pop stores. We didn't have Bass Pros or academies back then.
Right.
The place you could fish and lure was normally at a hardware store or a mom and pop store. And the next call, I want to say it was the same day, but I know it was in a day or so after that. I got a call from Jim Bagley, and Bagley had started making balsa baits. And I knew Jim and became a great, great friend. And all in the mix of this, I got another call from Nick Cream in Tyler, Texas. Nick invented the plastic worm, and he invited Diane and I to fly to Shreveport, and he picked us up and wanted us to stay with him over the weekend. And that really impressed me, because 50% of the fish I was catching on plastic worms.
All right.
So I went in, and I met Cosmo Cream, Nick's wife, Diane. They took a liking to each other. And Nick showed me around the factory and showed me how they make their worms. And I said, well, what would you want me to do for you? He said, I want you to fish with writers and any people that we can. Insulashman owned a big chain of stores in Texas, And he said, I'd like to see if I could get Insulation to come to Toledo and fish with you. And then there was guys from the Dallas Morning News, the Houston Chronicle, Little Rock Democrat, just different writers coming in. And we made a worm kit called, it was a shimmy gill. It's what he called the bait, named the bait. And he made it in a 6, a 7.5, and a 10. But I fished at 7.5, so he put 6 worms in a pack, 3 slip sinkers, and 2 hooks. And I'm telling you, we sold the britches off those. we made it with that shimmy gal kit, and it'd be like 6 purple, or 6 blue, 6 black, 6 pink, 6 yellow, 6 white, and of course, my color that I had done so well with in tournaments when I fished a worm was blue. And it used to laugh and say, when you're out of blue, you're out of worms. But,
Yeah.
That event took place, and I worked for Nick for about 2.5 years, and he was a wonderful fellow, a good Christian man, wonderful wife. And I got to thinking, I woke up one morning and I said, if I can do this for Nick, I can do it for myself. I think I can. And I went out, walked in Nick's office one morning, and I said, drove to Tyler, and I said, Nick, you've given me a major start in this industry, and I love you to death for it. But I want to try it on my own. And he said, you see that door over there? And I went, oh, goodness, what's he going to say now? And he said, it swings both ways. You go try it, and if it doesn't work out for you, you come back. You'll always have a place here with this company. And I said, Nick, I certainly appreciate it. And I continued to fish tournaments, and I fished Nick's baits for a good period of time. And in Memphis, I had a friend that was a taxidermist, but he worked for American Airlines, and he did taxidermy work on the side. And I would go over and skin ducks for him for $3 a duck that he was going to mount. But I noticed he had a rack with safety pin and a lead and a hook and an arm. I said, what are you doing with those spinnerbait frames? He said, well, that's what I use over at Horseshoe Lake. And I just fixing to paint these up. And he said, here, I've got a few of them already painted. Here, take a few of these. And I started fishing with Bill and learned a lot about shallow water fishing that I didn't know. And how to fish a cypress tree, and how to fish a change in depth. And all of that, I contributed back to people like Glenn Andrews, Floyd Mabry with Bomber, tremendous shallow water fisherman, and Buck Perry that made the spoon plug. I learned a lot about deep water fishing and, of course, shallow water fishing from Floyd. And I met these people, and I talked to them, and I talked to them, and I talked to them. And I tried to just try to learn everything I could possibly learn. And so around about that time, a good buddy of mine started a company in Memphis called Strike King Lure Company. And Charles and I worked on that, and he bought all the stuff from Bill, the ladles, lead pots. The spinnerbaits back then were made out of a safety pin, and you just take it and put the blade up here, and then mold the lead around the other end of the safety pin.
Mm-hmm.
A double loop bend in the middle of it. But anyway, Charles and I started that. And I'd have writers call me and say, Bill, can we go on a fishing trip? And I said, sure. And we'd go on one. And it'd be the next week I'd have two more that want to go fishing, either for a newspaper writer or a magazine writer. And I could tell something wasn't right. And one day I just walked in and I said, Charles, we need to talk. And he said, okay. I said, it seems like every time that I go off on a fishing trip with a writer, I can tell by your expressions, it irritates you. He said, no, it doesn't really irritate me, Bill. I guess I've got a jealous spot. They never want me to go, but they always want you to go. And I said, well, I can't help it. And he said, well, I know that, but it just kind of hurts my feelings. And I said, Charles, I don't know what to do about it. I could ask the writer. I said, can I bring Charles along? Well, occasionally I did bring him along, but it didn't get any better. And finally I walked in one day and I said, hey, I started this thing with nothing. We started this thing with nothing, and I'm going to ease out. And he said, what do you mean ease out? I said, I'm going to let you have it. And I'll help you promote wherever I can because you're a good friend. And so I left, and I got a call from his wife. Boy, she chewed me out. I'll never forget that. Susie gave me a fit. And I said, Susie, you just don't understand. And so I made a phone call to Cotton Cordell in Hot Springs, Arkansas. In Cotton, he said, I bet your days of fishing are over now. I said, you got a lure company. And I said, no, not anymore. He said, what are you doing? I said, I don't really know. I'm taking people fishing. And he said, what are you doing Monday morning? I said, I hope I get to come to Hot Springs. He said, that's where you're going. You get over here. I want to talk to you. So I went over and I started working for Cotton, doing the same thing that I was doing for Nick, basically. And now some discount chains were starting to appear, like Carondelet, early days of Walmart. Sam had some smaller stores. Woolco, Carondelet. I can remember these stores. Carried sporting goods. Even J.C. Penney started carrying sporting goods. And so I took off and working for Cotton. And Cotton called me one night and he said, you know something? We need a fishing show. I said, what kind of fishing show? He said, television. I said, I know the perfect guy for it. He said, who's that? I said, Jerry McInnes. And Jerry and I became good buddies. Jerry had a fishing show out of Indiana called the Falls City Sportsman. Falls City was a beer company. And he and I, we roomed together. We fished tournaments together and all that. I had learned a lot shooting stuff with a scooping cannon. It was just pick it up and shoot it. It was an automatic focus. It was a real simple camera, very comfortable to hold. And I'd been shooting stuff with Jerry. Well, I told Cotton, I said, Jerry McInnes would be a good guy. He says, no. I've got somebody else in mind. And I said, who's that? And he said, you. Who are you talking to? He said, and I went, Cotton, I don't mean to. Me doing television be like pouring perfume on a pig. I said, there ain't no way I can do that. He said, well, yeah, you can. And you just tell me what you need. And I said, well, I've been shooting a camera from you with. It was a Canon Scoopy, nice compact camera. And he said, all right, we'll get you one of those. And I went to a guy I knew that met at church. He was an editor for the CBS affiliate in Memphis. And I talked to him, and he showed me how to do this and how to do that, do this and do that, and how to edit film on a wheel, edit and splice it, edit, and, but it was all just visual. And I went to the ABC affiliate, the NBC affiliate in Memphis. They weren't interested. They had Graney. And Jeff Michaels was program director at the CBS affiliate. I came home, I was kind of put out, discouraged. Diane said, well, isn't ABC sports minded? I said, yeah. And she said, why don't you go talk to them? She said, you get up in the morning, you put on a coat and tie, and you go over there and you see them. And I said, okay. Don't think negative, think positive. And I said, okay. And I went in the Channel 13 office building. There was a little lady there named Elizabeth. She worked the switchboard. And I said, I'd like to see your program director. She said, oh, that'd be Mr. Lance Russell. And I said, Lance Russell, he does wrestling on the weekends? And she said, yes. He's a big promoter. And I said, oh, I know, I don't know him, but I know of him. So I had been fishing around Memphis in our local newspaper, our morning newspaper, Sunday paper. Henry Reynolds was our outdoor editor. And he'd been writing articles about my success and what I'd been doing. And she said, it's about 12 o'clock. They've all gone to lunch. I'm so dumb. I didn't even think, go over there at noon, I got over there at about 11 o'clock, about 10 minutes to 12. She said, have a seat. And now, they're not going to be back probably until after 1 o'clock. And I said, that's fine. I'll wait. About 12:30, she said, Mr. Russell came in the back door upstairs. And let me see if he can see you. Mr. Russell, I've got someone here who'd like to see you. Okay, I'll send him right up. Well, I went up this that green carpeted stairway down the hall to the third door. I walked in, and he jumped up, walked around his desk, and shook my hand. He said, Bill, I'm glad to meet you. And I said, well, I appreciate that. He pulled a chair over and he says, just have a seat right here. And he said, tell me what you got on your mind. And I told him, I said, I'd like to do a TV show. And he said, well, what? I know it's about fishing. I said, yeah, I'd like to do a fishing show either on Thursday night or Friday night here at WHBQ. He said, I like that idea. What kind of format? And I said, I think if you can entertain and educate at the same time, you got the best part of both worlds. And he said, I like that. And I said, I'd like to talk about area lakes. I'd like to talk about conservation issues. I'd like to bring local fishermen in, talk about what's hot, what's not, particular lures and all that. That'd be perfect. He said, but we got to get a pilot if we're going to do this. And I said, a pilot? I said, I don't even have an airplane. I said, I can't do that. He said, wait a minute. A pilot would be a show that we would like to show. And he explained what a pilot was. And I said, oh, okay. And Just, again. And he said, you work on it and let's get back together the middle of the week. If you think you can find somebody that would be interested, and I'll work on it, and I'll have our salesman work on it. I said, great, thank you so much. Well, he was opening the door for Bill Dance to do television. Well, I jumped in my truck and I took off, and I went down to a big discount house called Surplus City. And they had a wall. Oh, I mean, it ran from here to Yondersville. I mean, it was just, I don't know how long that wall was. It was just packed with fishing lures and rods and reels and stuff. And a friend of mine who was manager there was Billy Woods. And I walked in. I said, what's going on? He said, nothing. What have you been doing? I said, I've been trying to start something here in Memphis. He said, what's that? A bass club? I said, excuse me. I said, no, we already did that. And he said, well, I tell you what, tell me what you got in mind. I said, I want and need a sponsor to sponsor me at a fishing show. He said, you know, it's funny that you came in here just about now, because Sig Schwartz, the guy that owned it, he and I were talking about doing some advertising and getting you to advertise some of our products. And it had been less than a week. And I said, well, look, how about sponsoring the whole show? And he said, well, we're interested. And I said, have you got about an hour right now that you can spend? He said, yeah. I said, what do you want me to do? I said, I want you to go with me out to Channel 13 and talk to Lance Russell. And he went, who did you say? I said, Lance Russell. You said Lance Russell? Lance Russell in wrestling? I said, yeah. You know him? I said, yeah. Bill, I'm telling you, you know who Lance Russell is? He's one of the biggest names in wrestling. My parents love him. My grandmother, boy, don't you say anything bad about wrestling, she'll beat you to death. He said, I can't believe that you know him. And I said, well, I do. So let's go. He jumped in the car. We ran in the station. Elizabeth, I said, Mr. Russell's still upstairs? She said, yeah, he's still here. So we bounced up the stairs and walked in, and he said, what in the world are you up to, buddy? And I said, I think I've got us a sponsor. He said, goodness gracious. And Billy was standing at the door with his mouth open. And I said, this is Billy Woods, Lance. And Lance says, Billy? He said, what? And he knew with him winding his belt or tightening his watch. He was, oh. And he was so nervous. And it looked like he was meeting Eisenhower or Kennedy. I said, he's just nervous because he never met anybody like you. And he said, well, Billy, pull up the seat. Let's talk. Well, that kick-started Bill Dance, Outdoors with Bill Dance. And just to go fast forward, I did that show with Carlton for Cotton for, I don't know, a couple of years. And I got a call from Advancers, which was a syndication company out of St. Louis, and Don Stork. He said, Bill, we'd like to syndicate your show. And I said, what does that mean? He said, we'd like to take it and put it in a bunch of markets around the country. Well, I told Cotton about it. And I said, Cotton, I'm going to be devoting a lot of time to that TV thing. I'm not going to be able to do that. He said, that's fine. Just do what you can for us. And he said, I think that's a great move. So I went on with advancers. We syndicated 90 network markets across the country and doing Bill Dance Outdoors. Let me back up. Right before that time, still working for Cotton, still doing a local show in Memphis. Their sister station in Jackson, Mississippi said, "Would you do one for us?" I said, "Sure." So I'd run down the highway, down Interstate 55. I'd take 4 shows for them. And then their sister station, WBRZ, Channel 2, an ABC affiliate in Baton Rouge, said, "You do one for us." Well, this was perfect because Baton Rouge, the state capital, I had boating safety people, game and fish people. In Jackson, even the governor loved to fish. I had the same thing there. I could draw people and draw local people in, take 4 shows, head on down to Baton Rouge, take 4 shows, and shoot a few shows while I was in that market, coming back through Jackson and shoot a show or 2, back to Memphis. And right after that, got a call from J.C. Penney's in Paducah. Said, "Would you do one for us?" I said, "Yeah." Well, I didn't realize what was really going on. But I started running. I quit tournament fishing for a year to get this really laid out and get it going. And I'd go up to Paducah, take shows, shoot a show maybe on Kentucky Lake, one on the Mississippi River, one on the Ohio River, whatever. Stuff in that area, Barkley Lake. And I come down to Memphis, of course, where I live. I'd have 4 shows, and I could intermix those shows. And I'd head on down to Jackson. When I was there, I'd shoot one on Ross Barnett, or maybe 2. One over on Lake Lee, show 1, Lake Washington on the Mississippi River oxbows, and shoot a show or 2 in Baton Rouge. I'd do about the same thing. Well, I was doing 52 weeks a year, 4 shows a week in 4 markets. It was 208 shows a year. And I was shooting my own shows. I was editing my own shows. I was lining up my own guests. And I'm going to tell you, it got to be a nightmare. After a period of time, I gave my show to a good buddy of mine, Bobby Matters in Baton Rouge, who had been a guest and knew how to do it. And then Ernest Neal at Ross Barnett in Jackson, another avid bass fisherman. And then I called J.C. Penney and told him I wouldn't be doing any more after about a month. Just let those shows roll out. And I kept Memphis for a period of time. And that's when I got a call from Don Stork wanting to syndicate. And he said, "That'll eliminate all this running you're doing. You do 1 show, we syndicate it." And
Right. Make it a whole lot easier that way.
Did what?
It'd make it a whole lot easier.
Oh, 100 times easier. And I started doing 90 markets and all over the place. And I was trying to branch out and shoot shows out and further away from home. And the cost of syndication started to skyrocket. And cable was coming on back then. This was early times. And I got a call from ESPN. Said, "Can you run your show with us?" And I said, "Yeah." And so I started the syndication. I dropped and I went straight with ESPN. And we did, we were everywhere. We were from Spokane to San Diego to Austin, Texas, to San Antonio, to Dallas, to New Orleans, to Miami, to Raleigh, North Carolina, to New York. We just blanketed the country. Right. And the shows were still basically the same type. It got me to the dance, entertaining and educating. And I was real high on education. And it helped me a lot. So after about 2 years on ESPN, I realized I just wasn't hitting that demographic market that I really needed to hit. And it was a little network over at Nashville, Tennessee called TNN, the Nashville Network. Well, they had fishing, they had hunting, they had bull riding, they had NASCAR. It was a perfect fit.
Was that
and
is
I
that
would-
the same network that had Jimmy Holt on it?
who?
Jimmy Holt.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I hit the perfect niche. The demographics were just perfect for me.
Right.
I picked up Chevrolet. I picked up Walmart. I picked up Purina. I had some big, powerful sponsors, along with what else I had, and we did that show for 15 years, and it was just perfect. I mean, everything just clicked right along. We were clicking along. Sponsors were happy, and then Gaylord Enterprises ended up selling TNN to some bunch up New York, up above New York, and their format changed 180.
Right.
And
Well, before we get, I don't mean to cut you off, Mr. Bill, but we got two more questions that we want to ask, and we got
I just drug this out forever, but I'm
Oh,
sorry.
No.
I was telling Pamela we should have called this our podcast instead of Deck Talk. We should have called it Rabbit Hole Podcast because we like going down rabbit holes and seeing wherever the rabbit goes. And but we do have a little time restraint, so I don't mean to cut you.
No,
Be
that's
rude
right.
about it. But I do want to talk to you. We got two more questions, and the first question is,
The
we
Bill
want to talk
Dance,
about- Go ahead, Pappy. Go ahead.
the Bill Dance National Giant Bass Open. I know Colin and I have been thrilled to fish in it and to be a part of it. Could you tell us a little bit about that so we can kind of help push that out as well?
This what it is. These two old boys over at Chattanooga got the idea to put together a tournament that you could fish 365 days a year, and they got it through. They got it kicked off, got it started pretty good. It got the press behind them real good, and it gives an angler a chance to fish a tournament. He could fish a national tournament, and his biggest fish, he could weigh that in to
Right.
the GBO, the giant bass, and he could win. He could win the tournament he's fishing with it. He could also have a chance to win, something with the GBO, where he could have an opportunity to come and fish in a national tournament, where he has the possibility of winning a Ford F-150 or a 21-foot bass boat. And the success of this thing has really taken off. I mean, we've really done well with it.
Yeah. Well, we've been surprised to see because we're fishing in it. And I'll tell you this, Bill, Pappy, about 3 weeks ago, I was fishing. It was around 9:00 in the evening. I was fishing on Chickamauga, and I caught my PB at 11:34. And so it was almost 11 and a half pounds and 25 and a quarter inches long.
Good Lord.
And and first thing that Pappy asked, he said, "Well, did you get it put in on the Giant Bass Open deal?" And I was like,
yeah,
"No."
Yeah.
I did not have any of my like the cards or anything like that to write down. I could not write down the code to put in for it for this month, and I was like, that just means I got to go catch another one. So,
Where'd you catch this fish?
On Chickamauga.
Oh, boy, that's one of our big bass lakes in the state.
It is.
Lots of big Floridas have been caught out of that lake.
Yeah, we we've got a good buddy of ours that here this past January, he caught the third biggest bass in Tennessee that's been recorded in Tennessee on Chickamauga. It was 14.8. And so, but he was just dragging a little contact. He wasn't even doing anything. He was on a guide trip, and he said, I just had a little small contact out there. And he said he was just trolling down, just kind of, or just drifting down this ledge. The next thing he knows, he just feels that little thump, and then it starts going out. He thought he was hung up on a log.
Well,
So,
it gives a guy the opportunity to fish 365 days a year. He can fish, he can wade fish, he can fish from the bank, he can fish in a kayak or bass boat. As long as he's registered, his fish can be applied to our virtual network, and the opportunity for him to, come to Tennessee and probably, I'm not sure where we're going to pick that lake, or they're going to pick that lake, but I think it may be Pickwick, which is a fabulous lake.
it is.
But this deal, to be a member of it, you can fish 365 days. You can fish every single day in this tournament, and it only costs you $45 for this membership. Well, when you look at it, that's less than, no, it's just about a dime a day, 10 cents a day, with an opportunity to win big prizes and big money. So,
Well, and they also do monthly giveaways and stuff as well.
they do. Absolutely.
So there's all types of ways to how you could win stuff even if it's just a monthly, or you can do the whole. I mean, it all it runs together. So I mean, you have, like what you were saying, 365 days to be able to cash in on it.
Yeah. It's really, really taken off extremely well. And I encourage anybody that's competitive. We're all competitive by nature, but
Right.
To jump in and take a shot at it. It's not that much.
No.
You'd spend $45 taking your wife out to dinner and do a movie one night.
Yeah. Well, just take her out fishing. I mean,
Yeah.
what a better romantic night, right?
Actually, you'll come out cheaper. You'll come out cheaper doing that than taking her out to dinner and a movie. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good thing. I've really enjoyed it. I mean, like you say, you can't hardly fish in a big tournament
Right.
you can't then less than that. I mean, and just to even be associated with something that Mr. Bill Dance is affiliated with is even better.
We put a lot of thought in it, and it's really going big. In fact, we're doing some more social media stuff today as we speak. After we speak about promoting it, it could be a great Christmas present. Give somebody a membership in this,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and you'll come out a lot cheaper than.
Oh yeah.
I want to kind of get back to the Cast King giveaway, and then we do have one last question for you, Mr. Bill. So the question is for the giveaway is, who did Bill Dance put a pie in their face in the 2025 Bassmaster Classic? So can you tell us the answer?
I know exactly who it was. You want to know?
Yes, sir.
They're both very good friends of mine, and I loved doing it to one guy especially, but the other guy I had to go easy with. The other two that won this Mercury event was Jimmy Houston. And Jimmy's got a mouth as big as a softball. Of course, good old easygoing Hank. Love him to death. So I walked over to Jimmy and I said, I love doing this. He got back, closed his eyes, and I got him on the back of the head, and I just smashed that pie right in his face, and I rubbed it around, and I pushed it up I pushed it up on top of his head, and that little old tin pan it was in,
Right.
he was sitting there and he looked like the Tin Man in the Wizard of Oz. That goofy looking little, and he said, I can't see. I can't see. I said, well, wipe the meringue in the eyes. It was the funniest looking picture. Everybody needs one. Everybody needs that picture to put in their garden. But then I walked over to Hank, and Hank said, Bill, please don't rub it all up in my hair. And I said, okay. So I was easy with Hank. I just pushed it in his face and maybe twisted it a little, just a little bit, but I didn't zoom up on his hair. He ain't got that much hair anyway, but I didn't put it up there.
Now, with that, was that more exciting to see that you or to do that to Jimmy, or was it more exciting to actually see him with the Power T hat on right before?
Well, both. Both.
Yeah.
It killed his soul to have to put a T-cap on. But anyway.
I imagine.
But he wanted the OU, Oklahoma University.
Yeah.
But it was a good promotion that Mercury did, and they're talking about doing something else maybe this coming year. I don't know what they've got, or next year, I should say.
Right.
And I don't know what they've got going yet, but it'll be a good thing.
Yeah. So our last question we ask everybody since the beginning of the podcast, and we cannot leave you out of it. So if you could go fishing with one person for the day, that person can be still with us or have passed away, who would that person be, and why would you want to fish with them?
I've been asked this question several times. If you could fish with three people, who would it be? It would be my granddaddy. It would be probably Billy Graham. And third would be the Pope. But narrowing it down to one, I would have to say Glenn Andrews. My buddy up at Lead Hill, Missouri.
Right.
He's 90 years old, but he still knows fishing like, an otter knows water. So
yeah,
that is amazing.
But anyway, that would be, I had an opportunity to take. I had a chance to take Billy Graham. I almost said Franklin. I had a chance to take Billy Graham fishing. And a guy in Detroit had it all worked out with a big advertising agency. And we were catching a lot of just big white bass below Pickwick's tail race at Pickwick Dam in Middle Tennessee. Right. And we had it all set up, and they opened the floodgates, and it just killed it. So then when we tried to set it up again, I couldn't go because I had a commitment that had been advertised. And then the next time we tried to set it up, Billy Graham he couldn't make it. He was beginning to get a little sick at that point. But we were going to take Billy Graham fishing, and we were going to title it Fishing Below the Dam and the Tail Race. We were going to title it Good Dam Fishing with Billy Graham. I told him, I said, there's a bad word in there. And he said, no, it's not. It's we're fishing below a dam. I said, Billy, you know what the fish said when he ran into a concrete structure? Mm-hmm. And he said, no. He said, the fish said, damn. But I would have loved to. I watch him on television, and tremendous, tremendous guy.
Yeah.
Just like my granddaddy was. He taught me so much about fishing. But anyway, I've met a lot of great people, and I've been very, very fortunate to fish with a lot of people that I admired all my life. Entertainers from baseball to football to country western people to NASCAR people to you name it. I've just had that great opportunity doing and being able to do what I love to do. And that's, I think, the happiest days of my life are when I'm on the water.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It's something about that water therapy, isn't it?
It is, buddy. I promise you it is. I love it. Win, lose, or draw on those days. Catch them,
Yes.
great. If you don't, you still got to go fishing. That's what counts.
Yeah.
So, guys, we want to thank y'all for watching. We hope that you enjoy this. And again, we hope that y'all have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And Mr. Bill, you are one amazing guy. And every time I get to meet you and have a few words with you, it's an honor and a half. And so hopefully I will see you, or we're going to be doing some media work for Bass for the Classic. So we will definitely run into you in Knoxville.
I'm looking forward to it. And I'd like to say Happy New Year, Happy Holiday Season to all your listeners, your viewers. Have a happy Christmas, and when time allows, catch one for me.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you again, Mr. Bill. And again, it's been an honor and a privilege. But I still look forward, and I still want to talk to you about your bloopers, though. Maybe we can do that in Knoxville.
Oh, we can. Okay.
All right.
So,
Y'all
guys,
take care. Take care.
You too, sir. Thank you again.
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.